everyone. Today's lesson is going to be on the accessory organs. The accessory organs are not actually part of the digestive system that food would pass through, but they do aid in digesting food, and they're part of the digestive system in a way where there are ducts that connect to the accessory organs to certain digestive organs, and maybe they're secreting digestive juices that are going to digest different macromolecules that you have eaten in your food. So we're going to talk about those accessory organs. They are the salivary glands, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. And there's also a question on your definition worksheet about the teeth. I don't really cover the teeth in this PowerPoint, and really all you need to know about teeth is that they tear and grind food into smaller fragments, and that's a physical change of the food. There's no chemical change going on there when the teeth are breaking down the food. And chewing, there's another term for chewing which is called mastication, and so you should have that term there under function of teeth in number 1 on the worksheet. So let's start with the salivary glands. There's 3 sets of salivary glands. There's the parotid glands, and in your textbook you'll be able to see where these salivary glands are, and they have ducts that all empty into the mouth. But the parotid salivary glands are anterior to the ear, so that means they're a little bit in front of the ear, and they secrete mucus to the back of the mouth, or saliva to the back of the mouth. In your textbook there's a picture. I don't have one in this particular slideshow, but if you're following along with your book, you can look to see where they are located in the mouth. The submandibular and sublingual both secrete into the floor of the mouth. The submandibular are under the tongue towards the front of the tongue, and they secrete again to the floor of the mouth. Sublingual are toward the back of the tongue, also under the tongue, and they secrete through ducts into the floor of the mouth as well. Sometimes, maybe this has happened to you or somebody you know, but if you move your tongue in certain ways, you can actually squirt that saliva right out of the duct, maybe onto a table or a paper that you're working on. Just something to think about if that's ever happened to you. That's what's happening, is those secretions are coming into the floor of your mouth or the back of your mouth, and sometimes just the way that you're having to move your tongue to talk or whatever, saliva may come flying out of your mouth. Funnier when I'm talking to a class and I can hear laughter. Anyway, saliva does contain an enzyme that starts the process of starch digestion. Now, starch, if you remember, are really long polymers of glucose. Now, this will not break it down to glucose molecules, but it'll cleave the starch into smaller sections that then, when they get into the duodenum of the small intestine, they'll break down more. There's also antibodies that'll inhibit bacteria that might be in your food, so it'll kill off bacteria that it can. Lysozyme is also in there as well, and that also inhibits bacteria. And it dissolves food chemicals so that your taste buds can send some sensory information to your brain, and you can taste your food. I didn't realize I had this tiny picture up in the right hand corner. So you can see the parotid glands are located right here. And you can see that they're in front of or anterior to the ear. The submandibular, we said, were in the back of the tongue, underneath the mouth or tongue, and sublingual are the ones right underneath your tongue towards the front of your mouth. So there is a little diagram there if you didn't see it in your textbook. The next accessory organ I would like to talk about is the pancreas. The pancreas secretes lots of enzymes that will break down all categories of digestible foods. So it will break down carbohydrates, it will break down nucleic acids, it will break down proteins, and it will break down lipids. So it's going to produce all different types of enzymes that will be secreted through a duct into the small intestine, the duodenum of the small intestine, and it will start that final digestion of those macromolecules. There's also a secretion from the pancreas that's an alkaline fluid that neutralizes that acidic chyme that's coming in from the stomach, because remember the stomach is very acidic. And so when that chyme is coming in from the stomach, we need something there that's going to coat the inside of the duodenum to protect it from that acidic chyme. And so there's an alkaline fluid that will come in and neutralize that chyme. The pancreas also has an endocrine function. It produces glucagon and insulin, which work with controlling the glucose levels in our blood. And we talked about those when we talked about carbohydrates. Those came up, and they will come up again a little bit later in this unit. So you can see that the pancreas kind of fits like a glove in the duodenum area of the small intestine. So it fits right in there, and it makes sense because it's secreting into the small intestine. So that duct, you can see right here, that opening that this is pointing to, that's coming from the pancreas, and also where the common bile duct from the gallbladder and the liver meet up. And so it makes sense that the pancreas is so close to the small intestine like that. The liver is the largest, actually, glandular organ, and it's the largest of the accessory organs as well. It's found right below the diaphragm, next to the stomach, in the right portion of the abdominal cavity, and the stomach's on the left portion of the abdominal cavity. It's a reddish-brown color. It has 4 lobes, and there is a ligament that is right here, and it's called the falciform ligament, and that actually holds the liver in place. So it's this tissue that holds the liver to the body so that it doesn't move around. And we talked about that as far as it's like the mesentery holding some of those digestive organs to the posterior body cavity. So it kind of works in that same way. Here is a picture of an actual liver. The liver produces bile, and bile helps emulsify fats that we have taken in and eaten. You can see really good the falciform ligament. The falciform ligament, if you follow this line in, right here in the center of the liver. And that ligament is holding the liver in place. You can also see down here the gallbladder, which we're going to talk about today as well. The gallbladder is just a storage tank for the bile that the liver produces. Now, in addition to the liver producing bile, it has a lot of metabolic and regulatory functions as well. I'm not going to go into all of those different functions because they would fall under a metabolism a section of the textbook, and so I don't get into too many of those functions. But we will talk about the bile and how it's used in digestion, because the bile is a function of the liver that is a digestive function. But just know that there's lots of other functions of the liver. It's a pretty important organ that we can't live without. We have to have the liver for many reasons. So bile is produced in the liver by hepatocytes. Hepatocytes are just liver cells. Cytes means cell. Hepato means liver. So let me write that out for you. So hepatocytes are just liver cells, if you want to add that into your notes. And they make up the liver. Bile is a yellowy green watery solution, and it contains bile salts. And I think that's on the next slide, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. Before I do that, though, I want to talk about how the bile travels. So bile travels from the liver through the common hepatic duct, and I'm going to show you these on a diagram on the next slide, and it enters the duodenum, that portion of the small intestine, through the bile duct. And I'm going to show you all these ducts and passageways to get to the duodenum on the next slide. So once the bile is secreted from the liver, it's going to come down. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to hit my marker. Okay, so right and left hepatic ducts are where the bile first enters to leave the liver. Those two come together and they form the common hepatic duct. So the right and left hepatic ducts form one duct together called the common hepatic duct, and you can see that if you follow along where those lines are pointing. Now, if the duodenum needs the bile to emulsify fats, it's going to continue down the bile duct. Now, if there's no fats that need to be, there's nothing in the duodenum, we didn't eat a fatty meal right now, so there's nothing to be digested, the bile will be stored, and it will be stored in the gallbladder. So the gallbladder is right here, and the duct that leads to the gallbladder is the cystic duct. The only time that the cystic duct is used is for bile to enter into the gallbladder, or for bile to come out of the gallbladder because you need more for digestion and your liver is not producing enough at that time because you have enough stored. So it'll pull from there if it needs any extra. So the cystic duct is only used to get bile in and out of the gallbladder when needed. So after the bile comes down the bile duct, it actually meets up with the pancreatic duct. And you can see right here that they come together and then they empty in to the duodenum right there, called the duodenal papilla. So that's where it enters into the duodenum, and that's where all those enzymes are coming in from the pancreas and the bile is coming in from the liver and the gallbladder. So I just wanted to show you all those ducts. It has kind of a long passageway to get down to the duodenum to start that digestion when food is there to be digested. So now let's move on to bile. The bile that I'm talking about is that yellowy green watery solution. And if we get to do the dissection this year with the mink, you will actually notice that the gallbladder is a greenish color because of what it's storing. Bile is a yellowy green color, and it actually makes the gallbladder that color. So it's pretty interesting because you'll see all of these red organs, and then you'll see the gallbladder, and it's like this dark green color. And so it's pretty interesting to see that difference. Even the pancreas, they show it that kind of yellowy look on all these slides we're looking at, but when you actually look at it in the body or in an animal, in our case the mink, it does have a little pink to it, so it's not that yellowy color, but they do show the gallbladder green, and it is actually that green color. So bile does consist of bile salts, biopigments like bilirubin, and cholesterol. We all know what cholesterol is, phospholipids, and electrolytes. Remember, cholesterol and phospholipids, those are all things that we talked about in the lipid chapter, and electrolytes are there as well. And electrolytes would be things like your sodium ions, your potassium ions, things like that your body uses. The bile salts and the phospholipids are what aid in digestion because they're going to emulsify fats. And emulsifying fats means, let's just say that I have this big globule of fat. I have the bile coming in. Let's color that bile green. I have the bile coming in to break down this fat. And so the bile kind of attacks the fat, and the fat ends up breaking down into smaller little fat particles, like so. So what the phospholipids and the bile salts do is just break apart that big globule of fat and kind of attack it and break it into these smaller bits and pieces so that your body is able to then break it down even further with enzymes from the pancreas. So that's what's happening with the bile. Now, if the liver produces too much bile, it will be stored in the gallbladder. And the gallbladder is this really small little green sac that is in a depression or fossa of the liver, and I'll show you where that is on the next slide. So bile will back up the cystic duct if there's no digestion occurring. Like I said in the previous slide when I was showing you all of the ducts, the cystic duct will allow extra bile in there for storage, or it will release bile if it's needed for digestion. So that cystic duct is only used when digestion is not occurring for bile to go into the gallbladder, or when digestion is occurring for bile to come out of the gallbladder. And when it's in the gallbladder actually concentrates it. So it kind of removes some of the water and concentrates it. And then when it leaves the gallbladder, it gets rehydrated, or more water added to it as it goes down the duct to get to the duodenum. And this is what I mean by the fossa. There's this just kind of a little area in the liver where the gallbladder just sits up inside the liver. So if we get to do our dissection, you actually have to kind of pull apart the liver to find the gallbladder. So pretty interesting. It just sits up in that little depression or fossa. And also I want you to notice on this slide the relationship of the stomach to the liver. The liver is off to the right of your abdominal cavity. The stomach is right next to it on the left. And then notice that the pancreas kind of slides behind the stomach and then fits in that little hook of the duodenum. So it goes from the duodenum all the way behind the stomach. So it's a pretty long, elongated looking organ. And then again, the anatomy of the bile ducts, this kind of pulls those ducts out, makes it easier to see. So you've got the right and left hepatic duct coming together to form the common hepatic duct, which then, when the bile gets to this area, can either go into the gallbladder or it can continue down the common bile duct and meet up here with the pancreatic duct and go into the duodenum. So that's just giving you the little anatomy of those ducts that we talked about in a previous slide. Now there's several conditions that could happen. Maybe you know somebody or you yourself have gallstones, and gallstones is caused by too much bile in the gallbladder, or it's been in the gallbladder too long, or it's been dehydrated too much. So when that happens, when it's been maybe stored for too long and not used, it could cause gallstones, which are tiny little deposits that look like little stones, and they block the cystic duct, and so the bile cannot leave the gallbladder, and no bile can enter the gallbladder, and it can cause a lot of pain. If a person can't get rid of gallstones, or they're prone to gallstones, they can actually remove your gallbladder, and you can live without your gallbladder. The bile just won't have a place to be stored, and that's okay. The liver will just produce what it needs to do the digesting that it needs to do at that particular time. Another condition is jaundice, and this is when bile pigments like the bilirubin and maybe the bile salts enter your bloodstream, and it actually causes you to kind of have a yellow tint to your skin. And a lot of times what you need to do for that is to be in the sunlight, because the sunlight helps get your color back and get rid of those bile pigments in your blood. So maybe you know someone, or sometimes babies that happens to, and you need to keep them in the sunlight to help get their color back. So that is one condition that is an imbalance in your body due to bile pigments or something with your gallbladder. And then we have two other conditions on this slide. Hepatitis, which I'm sure you have heard of. This is due to a viral infection. There's several different strains of hepatitis, A, B, and C. And you can get vaccinations for some of them so that you don't ever get the hepatitis infection. And this affects your liver, and what it does is it makes your liver very hard and fibrous, and it inflames your liver. And this can also be caused by drinking too much alcohol. in excess for lots and lots and lots of years, and it will cause cirrhosis. So they're both inflammations of the liver, hepatitis and cirrhosis, and it causes the liver to become hard and fibrous. And so on this slide, I have what a normal liver looks like. And then you can see the liver on the right is one that has cirrhosis, or it could even look like that if it has a really bad, if you've had hepatitis for years and it's been working at your liver, it will end up being hard and the cells are dying off, and it can end up killing you. And people have died of cirrhosis of the liver due to complications of that, because it's really killing off your liver cells. And your liver does a lot for your body, not just for digestion, but remember I said metabolic as well. And so when your liver starts failing, things in your body are going to start failing as well. Now there is a diagram on your definition worksheet for the accessory organs. So it shows the liver, the pancreas, the duodenum, the gallbladder, and I have you labeling all of those, and you can use your textbook to help you with that. See how much you know just from the notes, and then maybe look at your textbook to double check yourself and to write in the things that you don't know. But that's there for you to use for studying as we get closer to quiz and test time. And that's it for the accessory organs. So again, that's in page 472 to 476 in your textbook, and you have a definition worksheet that goes with that, and that can be dropped in the Dropbox when you're finished, and it can be a picture or a PDF. It doesn't matter to me. It's not something I'm grading. It's more me just checking as a homework assignment. And you can drop that in the Dropbox for me to check. But that's it for the accessory organs. I hope you enjoyed that lesson. If you have any questions, like always, just email me or reach out, and I'll answer any questions that you might have.